everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. So we are in chapter 53. This is 53c, and this one is called the Super Six. I was considering the Sinister Six, but not everyone on this list is bad. In any case, let's get into it. Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol ha'omim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam hallelujah. 6 men were likened to Adam, and they all perished, and they are. And we'll go through the list, and then we're going to break it down. Now, again, officially, there's different variations of this text, but the explanation is that there were 6 individuals, 6 men that were known by this specific characteristic, which was supernal, and that specific characteristic is what brought about their demise. Okay? All right. Number 1, Samson by his strength, and by his strength he died. 2, Saul by his height, and by his height he died. Asael by his swiftness, and by his swiftness he died. 4, Josiah by his nostrils, and by his nostrils he died. 5, Zedekiah by his eyes, and by his eyes he died. And 6, Avshalom by his hair, and by his hair he died. So what does our team mean when it says that these individuals were likened to Adam? Now remember how Adam was created. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So again, the English says man. However, the Hebrew, vayivare Elohim et ha'adam. Okay. Now, as we clearly know, God has no image, and there are different names that refer to God. In this case, it is Elohim, vayivare Elohim et ha'adam, right? Which is not exclusive to God, but also means other created angelic beings. Case in point, from Exodus 20, verse 3, Lo yelecha Elohim acherim al panai. You shall not have other gods in my presence. Or from Genesis 32:31. And Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw Ra'iti Elohim panim el panim vatinatzel nafshi. I saw Elohim face to face, and my soul was saved. And from Judges 13:21-22. And the angel of the Lord did not continue to appear to Manoach and to his wife. Then Manoach knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoach said to his wife, we shall surely die because we have seen Elohim. Okay, we get it. Now, our text says likeness, dumut, and not image, tselem. Like it says, Ze sefer toldot ha'adam, in Genesis 5:1, Ze sefer toldot ha'adam, beyom bero Elohim Adam, bidmut Elohim asa oto. He made him. On the day that God created Adam, in the likeness of what? Of Elohim, he created him. Meaning, he resembled an angelic being. And as we have learned, angels can certainly have humanoid type features. Absolutely, right? A head, a torso, arms, legs, and feet. Just like the Sephirot, the attributes, and just like the Mishkan, and even a better example of this is the third temple. If you look at the schematics of the third temple, according to Ezekiel, and the Ramchal breaks it down in Mishkanei Elyon, you actually have schematic. It looks like a man standing. Excuse me. So it looks like a man from above, if you look at the schematics of the third temple. None of this is by accident, because we have learned that man is a microcosm of creation itself, because man was set to rule over all of creation, as said in Genesis 1:28. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it. Elohim vayomer lehem. So remember, even the Yud Kei Vav Kei has not been introduced to anyone until it was introduced to Moshe. So Elohim is a different aspect, a different element of creation. This does not mean that we are likened to God, but rather in the image of likened to. What does that mean? Man, Adam, was supposed to fill the entire space. God is also known as Hamakom, the space, right? man was, in fact, did fill the entire space, all of creation. That's what he filled. That's when the angels beheld him and they said, oh, we're going to start worshiping you because you are Elohim. And he's like, no, it's not me. I'm in the image of, kind of, but obviously not equal to. What other religions get wrong, yes? So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the physical attributes that can resemble their spiritual counterparts of the created beings, i.e. the angels. There's another text like this one that can be found in Masechet Sotah 10a that reads, Tanu Abanan, Chamisha nivreu me'ein dugma shel mala v'chulan laku bahem. Our sages say 5 were created, not 6, according to Rabbi Eliezer. 5 were created akin to a representation of the heavenlies, and all were stricken by them. In other words, their strength was then their downfall. Me'ein, as it says, kind of, sort of, in a way, meaning not exactly, but sort of, in a sense you could say. Dugma, an example of, kind of, sort of. This is, you have to pay attention to the language here. Shel mala, of the above. So kind of, sort of, an example of, resembling somewhat of, because we can never. Okay. You'll also notice that here there are 5 examples, while we said Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer gives us 6. The question does arise, why is Jacob not mentioned here, as our sages say? And we have learned that Jacob had the same face as Adam. He looked exactly like Adam, as he even fooled the descending and ascending angels for a minute, right? They said, whoa, guys, come down. Look at the face. The guy's got the face of Adam over there. Okay, then also, why not Joseph, who looked exactly like Jacob? And why not David, who was given 70 years from Adam personally, and whose descendant, Mashiach ben David, is going to complete the rectification for Adam? You see, the answer is because here we're strictly speaking of basic physical attributes, meaning actual body parts, if you will, each man possessing a different part that were exceptional in their own right, comparable with the rest of humanity. Okay, so there has to be a distinction over there. As Adam was the pinnacle of the physical humanity, quite literally fashioned by the metaphorical hands of God, these individuals merited to receive these parts symbolically, in order to be killed because of them, thereby helping to rectify Adam. Now remember, this is not to be taken literally, and the language is very clear. Likened to. In the English, it's just completely lost. Me'ain, ke'ain, ke, sort of. It breaks my heart when I see this, because I can understand if you're reading the English like, oh, yes, I totally get the pagans and why they're saying that man is the image of God and God is the image of man. They're one and the same. Number 1. Samson by his strength. Born to a father from the tribe of Dan and a mother from the tribe of Judah, he is the first messianic figure to rise from Israel after they had entered into the land. These tribes will forever be tied. David, the blueprint for the last messianic figure, was born to a father from Judah and a mother from Dan. Judah is known as the greatest tribe, while Dan is known as the least of all the tribes. Nevertheless, both are necessary, and you cannot have one without the other. So many similarities. In some of the ancient books, it says that when Mashiach ben David will reign, the captain of his guard will actually be from the tribe of Dan. In fact, Jacob himself, when he was blessing his sons before his death, he believed that the King Mashiach was actually coming from Dan when he saw Samson. Anyway, this is nothing new, as they have been instrumental in working together for the sake of Israel and the redemption of the world according to the word of God. You see, he even called them by name. Exodus 31, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have imbued him with the Spirit of God and with wisdom and insight and knowledge and with talent for all manner of craftsmanship." Skipping over a few verses, and behold, with him, from Judah, with him I have placed Oholiab, the son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan, calling these two by name, and all the wise-hearted, into whose hearts I have instilled wisdom, and they shall make everything I have commanded you. inseparable. Samson was given his strength as he grew, and this is where he lost it, from Judges 16:19. And she put him to sleep upon her knees, and she called to the man, and she shaved off the 7 locks of his head, and she began to afflict him, and his strength left him. Vayaser kocho me'alav was lifted from, again, because it wasn't about his actual physical, the biceps and to try to pump you up. No, it's the strength that God gave him. It's not by might nor by power, right? And this is where his strength helped him with the redemption, but also brought about his demise. His health strengthened him, his strength, I'm still there. His strength helped him to judge Israel, right? But also his strength is what took him out. Judges 16:30, and Samson said, "Let my soul die with the Philistines." And he bent with his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein, and so on and so forth. In other words, and by his strength he died, right? His strength is what made him great, and by his strength, that was his end. All right, meaning the bottom line of his end. There's a whole story over there. It's fascinating. 2, Saul, by his height. The Hebrew says komato, regarding the height, but in other instances, the word gova is used. Gova, gavoha, is tall, high. Koma could also be his stature. Koma could also be his how shall we say? His levels. There's a komot, a building with let's say a 5-story building would be binyan chamesh komot. Okay, so level, stature, they're all kind of one and the same, but they explain different things also in a spiritual context. But they have the same meaning, generally speaking. So we have the first introduction to King Saul in 1 Samuel 9:2. And he had a son whose name was Saul. And he was young and handsome, there being no one of the children of Israel handsomer than he. From his shoulders and upwards he was taller than any of the people. Mishichmo vamala gavoha mikol ha'am. Okay, taller, gavoa. But here we're saying komato, gavoa mikol ha'am. And his death, 1 Samuel 31. This is obviously a sad story. These first 2, very sad stories, obviously. And the Philistines fought with Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, and the slain fell on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Avinadav and Malchishua, Saul's sons. And the battle fell heavy upon Saul, and the archers found him, and he was very much frightened of the archers. And Saul said to his weapons bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and run me through and mock me." Meaning, mutilate, torture, everything that the Philistines of today have done to us. This is what nothing changes, basically. But his weapon bearer was unwilling, for he was very much afraid, and Saul took the sword and fell upon it. Vayikach Shaul et hacherev vayipol alea. But this was not the point of his downfall, as he had already died the night before. This was just the physical outcome. So from 1 Samuel 28:20 it said, "And Saul hastened and fell his full length to the ground. Vaymaher Shaul vayipol melo komato." Remember, that's how the text introduces it. Introduces his height, his stature, if you will. Melo komato. By all his stature, what brought him to greatness, what separated him from everybody else, that is what was his bottom line final end. Vayipol melo komato, fell his full length, his full strength, his full stature, everything that brought him to greatness to begin with, that's what took him down. A sad tale of the bigger they are, or taller, lengthier, right, than the rest, the harder they fall, his full length. From the moment he heard this news from the resurrected spirit of Samuel, he was but waiting to die. Samuel's like, dude, you're done. You're a dead man walking. And by his height, he had died. 3, Asael by his swiftness. Now, this is an interesting one because the Talmud gives us a different person with the same name. Different spelling, and that is King Asa, or Asael of Judah. So there's two of them. And he too was stricken by not necessarily his swiftness, but by the instruments that allow said swiftness, by his feet, right? That's what that means. The reason the Talmud gives is because he caused the Torah scholars to stop studying and put them to work. As a result, he got a terrible case of gout. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer gives us the story of Asael from 2 Samuel chapter 2, where David and his men were cleaning house from the tribe of Benjamin, and all those who were loyal to the now deceased King Saul, who came against David in the end, right? So verse 17, and the battle was very sore on that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before David's servants. And the three sons of Tzeruiah were there, Joab and Avishai and Asael. And Asael was as light of foot as one of the deer which are in the field, meaning he was exceptionally fast, almost supernaturally. But he wasn't the fastest man alive. That is Barry Allen. Everyone knows that. No, that title goes to Naphtali ben Yaakov, right? Who could run up walls, cross great distances in a flash, and was even described as able to run atop the wheat stalks without even bending them. The reason he is not mentioned here is because he was not defined by his swiftness. As great as he was still, his definition was Naphtali, the son of Jacob. Oh, you're the son of Jacob. Judah, who was like the Superman of that time, right? Like the Hulk. He could shatter the world, but he was not known by that. What was he known for? By taking responsibility. That was the power and the strength of his greatness. You see, there's such beauty over here. In other words, we're not defined by the gifts that God gives us. How do you conduct yourself? That is the measure of a man. That is the measure of Judah specifically, the strongest one that there is, and yet still taking responsibility. I was wrong. I made a mistake, and he owned it. Beautiful. I love these things. Anyway, they're very relatable, you see? We can't relate to flawless superheroes. That has nothing to do with us. The reason he is not mentioned here, like we said, Naphtali, is because he was not defined by his swiftness, nor did it have a hand in bringing about his demise. But as far as Asael ben Tzeruiah, that is exactly what happened. He chased Avner, who told him to relent and let him go, otherwise he would kill him. Avner was bigger, he was stronger, he was holding a spear. And Asael insisted on following right behind him. So look what it says. And Asael pursued Abner, and did not turn to go to the right or to the left after Abner. And Abner turned around and said, "Is that you, Asael?" And he says, "It is I." And Abner said to him, "Turn you aside to your right or to your left. Like, stop following me right behind me. Go, you want to run next to me, dude? Seriously." Again, they were enemies, right? He was running away. He was chasing him, and take you hold of one of the boys and take to yourself his clothing. But Asael did not want to turn aside from following him. And Abner continued further to say to Asael, "Turn you aside from following me. Why shall I strike you to the ground? And how will I hold up my face to Joab, your brother?" And he refused to turn aside, and Abner struck him with the back end of the spear under the fifth rib, and the spear came out from behind him, and he fell there and died in his place. Like, dude, I told you, just move to the side. I don't want to kill you. Twice he told him. And it was that everyone who came to the place where Asael had fallen and died stood still, like, what? And by his swiftness, he had died. Josiah by his nostrils. Who is Josiah? Excuse me. He was one of the good kings of Judah. Yoshiao. And we'll see his story in 2 Kings 22. We'll start reading the first couple of verses. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Yedidah, the daughter of Adaiah of Batsakat, right? Okay. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. It's always a good thing when this is how it's written about you here. And he walked in all the ways of who? David, his father. When David is called your father, that means it's good. Or, I mean, in that context, right? You have Menashe, who did not walk in the ways of David, his father, and the other kings of Judah, right? And he turned away neither right nor left. In other words, just like God said, David, you're my guy, no left, no right. Don't start blazing anything. The trails have already been blazed for us all. Just do as they did, and you cannot go wrong, okay? Don't start getting all whatever. To explain this one, our commentators had to go to other books in the Tanakh and then some Midrash as well, starting with Lamentations by Jeremiah, chapter 4, verse 20. I always wonder about this verse, right? Look at this. Listen to the verse and you will understand the subject matter. The breath of our nostril, the Lord's anointed. Ruach apenu Mashiach Adonai, nilkad bishchitutam asher amanu betzilo nichya bagoim. The breath of our nostrils, the Lord's anointed, was captured in their pits, of whom we had said, under his protection, we shall live among the nations. The Lord's anointed, this can include anyone chosen by God, right, to perform a certain task, from any of the Kohanim who have been Meshuchim Mashiach, right, to Cyrus, the king of Persia, who was not from Israel at all. He was a goy, and yet he was called Meshichi. God said, he is my anointed. And of course, we have King Mashiach. The Maharzu says that the verse in Lamentations is a hint towards Josiah, and in Midrash Rabbah Eicha, as well as the entire chapter 4. This is about Josiah. Josiah was the last good king of Judah, and after his death, exactly 22 and a half years, the kingdom of Judah was done and the temple was destroyed. And so it is said, in the Midrash, that Josiah had an exceedingly good sense of smell, greater and more impressive than any man, hinting towards the description of King Mashiach from Isaiah 11. And a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a twig shall sprout from its roots. Right? Why twig? Why from the ground? Because as we know, Mashiach is not coming from the clouds. Is not a heavenly angelic being. Mashiach is one of us, is a Baal Tshuva, is a person who experienced everything in this world and chose to forsake it and chose God. Why? Someone we can identify with, because people do not identify with flawless superheroes. It doesn't work, okay? People can identify somebody who falls and yet chooses to get up. That's every man. That is the strength of Judah, hence Mashiach coming from Judah. Okay. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. In other words, when it is time. Up until that, he's a regular dude. Rest upon him, a spirit of what? Wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and heroism, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he shall smell the fear of the Lord, and neither with the sight of his eyes shall he judge, nor with the hearing of his ears shall he chastise, right? We've learned about 4 out of the 5 of the senses that have been corrupted in the Garden of Eden, all except the sense of smell, which was not mentioned, right? Eve, she's the one that corrupted these things. Eve and Adam, they're pretty much one and the same. They're connected. So if she did it, it's as if he did it. And that's what happened. Eve saw the tree. There's her eyes, right? She touched the tree. That's her sense of feeling. She heard the words of the serpent and she tasted. But nowhere does it say that she smelled. I'm sure that she did smell the fruit of the tree, but it does not mention that, which means this one is reserved. This one is reserved for Mashiach. Because you can't fake smell. But if someone says, beautiful things, you're like, oh, wow, he's talking to, oh, look, he with the long beard and the big furry hat, Okay, no problem. They must be. No, it has nothing to do with appearance or what people say, talking points. This is about the fear of the Lord. You could smell your spirit. Is it for real or is it not? And that's something that nobody can mask. This is why this can be a very significant rectification for Adam. And this is also why it is the responsibility of Mashiach to do so, to finish the tikkun. However, as we know, there is a Mashiach ben David in every generation, and he will be revealed if that generation is worthy of redemption, assuming that it is the right time. If it is not, that individual who did no harm will be taken from the world. Again, they might live a full life, not even knowing, that they were Mashiach or having potential to be Mashiach, but it's not the time, so they're born, they live, and they die. Because they had reached their pinnacle, and from that point, there's, only the only way to go is down. See Enoch, right? As the Lord took him to become an angel. The Midrash says that if he would have stayed longer on earth, because he, again, 365 years, everybody else was living, 6, 7, 8, 900 years over there. 365, the Lord took him. Why? Because he could not go any higher in this world, right? Wasn't the time for anything, couldn't go any higher. That's why God took him at his peak over there. So, and that's why it says he took him there, because eventually he would have become corrupt, because if there's nowhere to go, that's it. You can only go down. See David, who completed his tikkun at age 70, the number of years given to him by Adam. Exactly. And see Josiah, as God relayed the following message to him through the prophet. Look what God says over here. And concerning the king of Judah, who has sent you to inquire of the Lord, so shall you say to him, so has the Lord God of Israel said, the words are what you heard. Since your heart has become soft, and you have humbled yourself before the Lord, when you heard what I spoke about this place and about its inhabitants, to become a desolation and a curse, and you rent your garments and wept before me, I too have heard it, says the Lord. Therefore, behold, I gather you to your forefathers, and you shall be gathered into your graves in peace, and your eyes shall not see any of the calamity that I am bringing upon this place. And they brought back the word to the king. Now, there's also another element over here, and that is it's applicable to certain tzaddikim, and that is that God spares them from seeing any sorrow during their lifetimes. So he takes them early. We could even see this in the Tanakh, right? Case in point, Abraham. Abraham was supposed to live to be 180, but he was taken at 175. Why was he taken? The reason was that he should not see how far Asael would fall. Asael is his grandson. Like it or not, he loved him, wicked as he was, but for him to take that next step over there, no. And exactly when did this take place? It took place at the Shiva of Abraham. The day that Abraham died, or within that week, that's when Asael decapitated Nimrod, right? Who was Abraham's archenemy. The day that Jacob was buried was the day that Hushim, the son of Dan, decapitated Asael. Asael and Jacob, they're complete opposites. Nimrod, who had the entire world, right? And Abraham was called one by God. Always has to be a balance. Okay, so before Asael would fall and, no coming back for that kid, at age 15, so that's when Abraham died, right? So God spared him that sadness, that grief. Not to mention how over the last 5 years, because we are currently in the time of the redemption and it's getting worse every day. And like I said, hold on to yourselves soon, kids. So many of the tzaddikim of our generation have been taken for the sake of Israel. Also because it gives us death of the righteous can bring atonement. It delays judgment just a little bit, giving Israel a chance to repent, while simultaneously sparing them from seeing what would befall Israel in the end. Now, obviously, our end is good, but we're going to get squeezed and shaken, again, like it says in Daniel, like no other nation. From the beginning of the world until the end will go through. That's what Israel's going to have to go through. Why? Because we have the Erev Rav embedded within us so deeply that the only way to remove the Erev Rav is if everyone goes into the fire. It's going to hurt, it's going to burn, but who comes out is the pure silver and gold. That's it. None of the other schmutz that have been, leaching. Anyway, as God said here, I gather you to your forefathers, and you shall be gathered into your graves in peace, and your eyes shall not see any of the calamity that I am bringing upon this place. In other words, God is doing you a mercy. He loves you because you are a tzaddik. And by his nostrils, he died, meaning by his righteousness. His righteousness gave him that kind of sense of smell that he could smell the fear of the Lord on every single person. Okay? So he had hints over there. And because he was righteous, that's all he's saying. All right. 5. Zedekiah by his eyes. This is also something very interesting. I'm about to tell you some crazy things going on here, so please pay attention. We know that Zedekiah's eyes were pierced by spears, and he was blinded, right? But there is more to this story, obviously. As we have learned, Zedekiah was the last king of Judah, and the one who reigned during the time of the destruction of the temple. He was placed on the throne by Nebuchadnezzar, who in fact named him Zedekiah, while his real name was Mattaniah. Zedekiah rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, against the strong prophetic warnings of Jeremiah, who he eventually threw into the pit. Jeremiah told him that if he stays the course and continues to rebel against the king of Babylon, the last thing he will see is the death of his sons before his demise, and so it was, as forewarned in Jeremiah 32:4. And Zedekiah the king of Judah shall not escape from the hands of the Chaldeans, for he shall surely be delivered into the hands of the king of Babylon, and his mouth shall speak with his mouth, and his eyes shall see his eyes. If you go today to Jerusalem, close to the Damascus Gate, pay attention now. I'm not making this stuff up. You can't. Close to the Damascus Gate, like kind of right down the street, it's not the safest area. You got to keep your eyes open, right? There's a tunnel opening, and this is called Zedekiah's Tunnel. You can Google this. They have, tours over there. That's because it really is Zedekiah's Tunnel. This dude, this evil, wicked king, the last king of Judah, built an escape tunnel. You see, while the Babylonians were descending upon Jerusalem and destroying the temple and the palace, killing everyone who remained, Zedekiah had the foresight, pun intended, to dig an escape tunnel. This incredible achievement began from right beneath the palace and would run along 50 kilometers underground until its exit by the Dead Sea area, by the plains of Jericho, and would roughly take about 9 hours to complete by foot. So this is a 9-hour, straight walk. And not to mention through the caverns would probably take longer. So what had happened was this, that he was supposed to escape and the Babylonians couldn't find him. But since God warned him just how his end would come, right, there's no way that he was going to get away. It doesn't matter how many escape routes he built. So what happened? As he went into the tunnel, as the Babylonian soldiers were completely destroying the city, killing everybody, God summoned a gorgeous, white, majestic-looking stag, like out of Lord of the Rings or something, capturing the eyes of some of the Babylonian soldiers. As Hezekiah was moving underground, unbeknownst to the soldiers, the stag was moving above ground, attracting and drawing the attention of the soldiers who gave chase, trying to capture such a magnificent and rare creature. They're like, yeah, there's plenty of us here to kill all the Jews. What is that? And, they started chasing after it. The stag led them right to the opening of the cave by the Dead Sea, just as Hezekiah stuck his head out. It's like, oh, coast is clear. No, it's not. And that is where they caught him, brought him to Babylon, where the last thing he saw before they pierced his eyes was his own sons being killed. Now, here's where it gets weird. You ready? Our sages say that he escaped at night. And while I'm sure that they had many, he had a torch in his hand and all that good stuff, the Maharsha from Midrash Agadah, points out that Hezekiah had incredible angelic eyes that could see perfectly in the dark. Built-in night vision, right? Like, pitch black and stuff, right? And they were exceedingly beautiful and strong. He was still a king of Judah after all, from the lineage of David. It counts for something regardless of your life choices. So let's see what the text says in 2 Kings 25. I'm reading verse 3. On the 9th of the month, that's Tisha B'Av, right? The famine became severe in the city, and the people of the land had no food. The city was broken into, and all the men of war fled at night by way of the gate between the two walls that was near the king's garden, and the Chaldeans were surrounding the city, and he went by the way of the Arava. And the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him, right? They didn't know that they were pursuing the king. The Arava, that's Aravot Yericho. And the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him on the plains of Jericho by the Dead Sea. And all his army had scattered and deserted him. And they seized the king and brought him up to the king of Babylonia, to Rivlah, and called him to account. They judged him. And they slaughtered Zedekiah's sons before his eyes. In other words, he witnessed it. Exactly what Jeremiah said that God said would happen. And they blinded Zedekiah's eyes and bound him with copper chains and brought him to Babylon. Our sages point out that the word eyes is not necessary, since it was enough to say they blinded him, right? So what it says, Shachatu le'enav ve'et einei Tzidkiyahu iver, right? Where it says, and they bound him with, and they blinded Zedekiah's eyes. It's enough to say, and they blinded him. Everybody understands. So, good point by our sages. Why did it say they blinded his eyes? This is where the investigation comes into play, right? Why would they say blinded his eyes? Since it's obvious, they gather from this that his eyes were very special. Okay, what's going on here? An example of the supernal, meaning Adam, image of, likened to Elohim, meaning an angel. They said that they tried piercing his eyes at first with spears, but they couldn't do it as his eyes would not break or be pierced. They were super strong. They were not human eyes almost. Night vision, seeing great distances. I guess if you take all these guys' powers together, then you get a Superman, right? Okay. That's when they began to slaughter his sons before his eyes. That's when he began to weep and start crying tears, right? And that is when they were able to pierce his eyes. So in other words, they tried, it wasn't working, killing his sons, that's what broke him, and there we go. Now, here's something that our sages do not say, because it happened only recently. Please pay attention, this is not written anywhere, listen. And I kid you not, Google this and you will be floored. And then I'll tell you things that you also can't find on Google. Just like you have the Kotel Tunnel tours and the City of David tours, you also have Zedekiah's cave tours. You do. Like I said, Google this. They call it cave and not tunnel because they don't show the whole thing, obviously. They opened this attraction about 3 years ago to the public, and I went there with my wife and 2 other friends. The banners that promoted the opening of this thing, Zedekiah's tunnel, right? It was the all-seeing eye and many other Illuminati symbolisms. No joke. I was briefly looking for it. Today, if you'll see it, they won't have it. But try and if you can find the opening of Zedekiah's tunnels, the posters everywhere. Again, also on the street right outside, it was the all-seeing eye and other Illuminati symbolisms over there. When we entered the cave, I'm telling you, this is me, my experience, our experience. When we entered the cave, now I was blown away by the size. It looked like a version of the Bat Cave in Jerusalem. It was very impressive, magnificent, the scale underground, right? And just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And we're talking about massive, not just like tunnels, massive. Then they were, because it's a tour, they were projecting like these holographic images on the walls in the cave to try and tell some sort of biblical story. They had music playing and all this stuff. But though I'm looking at an arena, I'm like, this is making me feel uncomfortable. Like something's not right here, whether it was the images or the deeper we went. Now, remember, this is a guided tour. There were at least 50 plus people over there. We also had a tour guide. And then our tour guide very nonchalantly says, as soon we're going to be coming up to the section where the Freemasons hold their rituals. Not held their rituals, currently hold their rituals. I was like, did you just hear what I heard just now? So I went to the tour guide and asked her just to make sure. What did you say? She says, yes, the Freemasons currently, as in today, not right at this moment because the tour is happening. And it was during the day. But the Freemasons, in other words, this is a thing. The Freemasons, Illuminati and whatnot, today, they, holding rituals over there without even hiding it, have rituals in this cave within this tunnel. There's an entire section. And the only way to continue on the tour is to walk right through the section where these rituals take place. Are you serious right now? I'm not joking. This is a thing. At that moment, it all hit me in the face. We did a 180 and we went right back the way we came. Got right out of Dodge. The general public, we were outside over there. You see other Orthodox people wanted to go in. We're like, do not enter that cave. We started to warn people over there. It's crazy. People don't know. So the general public, be it tourists, Jews from Israel, Orthodox, secular, what have you. They walk right through this place completely unaware of what any of those signs mean. People just don't know. A Jew is not allowed to enter into a church. This is a halachic prohibition. Why? Because a church is a house of idolatry. You are not serving God over there. You're serving Elohim Acharim, other gods. What do you think this is the place where they're holding whatever rituals they're holding over there? Anyway, people just don't know this. Now, there's no difference between the house of idolatry and this cave of idolatry, if you will. Just like you'll see everywhere, DC, London, New York, Paris, Berlin, and Jerusalem, and many other places, Masonic symbolism is all over the place. This is not a conspiracy theory, although I'm sure my video will get flagged for saying this, although it's not even hidden, right? It's not a conspiracy theory. This is a thing, right? The Supreme Court building in Jerusalem, please Google this. Like I said, the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem, the true governing body in Israel, regardless of what the government and elected officials say, as much as I disagree with them, you got the Supreme Court saying, no, we don't buy what the elected officials are saying. We are going to do these things. And we know that they're against Israel because all the decrees that they put out actually go against Israel. They favor Hamas, and those that are trying to kill us. So what's going on over here? So the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem, the same judges that since the establishment of the Zionist state of Israel have been ruling against anything that promotes Judaism in Israel. The building itself was built by Freemasons. And on the roof of the building, please, I say right now, Google the roof of the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem. You'll see the triangle over there, all-seeing eye. Look who built it. They are not hiding these things, but people don't know. No idea. None. And just to close this already weird story, here's something else. Here's where it even gets weirder. You're going to love this one. A good friend of mine found the exit of the cave by the plains of Jericho, by the Dead Sea area over there. As he approached it, he noticed wired fences, cameras, lights, sensors all around. Before he knew it, he was approached by none other than, and this is how he described it, men in black, speaking perfect English, asking him kindly to vacate the premises immediately, or there will be consequences. Do you know what excuse they gave? He said, why? I can't even, okay? They said this was all to protect an endangered bat species. Okay. There's that. Right. That's all that is going on here. All right. So you have a connection to the idolatrous king with angelic eyes, who probably kept significant treasures of the ancient world within those walls, right? The place is massive, only to have the Freemasons openly perform rituals till this day, while misleading the public to cross through that very house of impurity as being guarded by men in black, protecting bats. Sure. Okay. And we're the crazy ones, if we believe it. How fitting that this section of Zedekiah by his eyes, or by his sight, while most of us are completely blind, ends with, and by his sight was brought about his demise. I wish I could make this stuff up, but this is reality. And our final example of one who possesses features likened to those on high, number 6, this is Avshalom. Avshalom by his hair. However, regarding Avshalom, who we spoke about also in last class, we're going to delve into his story in the next class because it's also the final section of the chapter, since it says most about him. In other words, all these guys, it'll say a line or two. I'm giving you all the background so you actually, for gravity, for levity, if you will. But Avshalom, it discusses him the rest of the section and it goes into great detail. Okay? And something else, we're also going to get into the realms of hell because he's directly tied to them. And so on that note, that's all for today. Please stay tuned for next week's class. As always, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.